I'm John from PGP Wedding Films, and welcome to Say Yes to the Best, where we talk to the best wedding pros to give you wedding planning advice. Subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Instagram. We have new content out all the time to help you with your wedding planning. Today, I'm talking with Tanya from the Vow Whisperer. She is the Vow Whisperer, and she's going to tell us all about the best things to help you have incredible vows on your wedding day. Hi, Tanya. How are you?
All right, John. Nice to see you. Nice to be with you.
I know you officiate weddings as well, but can you kind of tell me how your business works as far as helping couples design their ceremonies as well as just write incredible vows?
I started out by helping couples write, and I'll explain that I'm not the writer. I'll explain the process and how to deliver their vows. I became an officiant only because the Knot and Wedding Wire had no place to put me since I'm such a niche business. So I was forced to become an officiant. I also do speeches and toasts, but what came out of the pandemic, which was really interesting, was that every uncle, best friend, father, whoever, sister wanted to officiate. And that's a huge ask, to ask somebody to please write a ceremony, write the story that you're going to tell about the couple, do all of that. That's, a huge ask. And so I am doing a lot of coaching and guiding people and writing the ceremony, but in conjunction with a couple, and then helping that uncle, father, Tom, Dick, and Harry write the story. And then I coach them in logistics, because as an officiant, you've got to know, where to stand, at what point, get out of the photographer's frame, turn the mic towards her for her vows, all of these things that people would not know how to do. So I do a lot of that now. It's a 4-part service, but I will say the crux of it is helping people with their vows.
So, obviously you are involved in a lot of the entire ceremony, the structure, and kind of the creation of the content. What would you say to people who are a little nervous about being up in front of all of their family and friends and doing their vows?
It's all about practice. Because if you're not ready, you're far more nervous. Most people are terrified of speaking in public. It's the number one fear over drowning, over being in a fire. Public speaking is number one. And I think through the work I do, I somehow transmit whatever it is, but they turn into very confident people who are really ready. And because they're ready, because they've practiced so much of that fear goes away.
Why do you feel like couples writing their own vows is such an important, meaningful part of a wedding day?
So it's interesting because there was an article in Brides magazine about 2 weeks ago. I don't remember the headline, something of what have we learned from the pandemic. And the number one on that list was that the ceremony has become the focal point. It has become the most important part of the wedding. It's more important than the first appetizer, than your dress, than the venue, whatever. So the ceremony is extremely important. When you're writing your own vows, you are personalizing it into such a way that it becomes about the couple. It's telling your story as a couple. It's not just an officiant or a rabbi or clergy or whatever going through the motions of the same stuff over and over again and then ending with the typical vows. Do you take, boom, you're married. Here, you've got the opportunity to express who you are as individuals and as a couple. And my goal with ceremony planning, with helping people with their vows, is for people to walk away, the guests to walk away and say, not only was that the most memorable, poignant, stirring, engaging, fun ceremony, but oh my God, that was so them. And that's the key right there. You are turning your ceremony into something about you rather than whoever's speaking, whoever's marrying you. So it becomes, I think, writing your vows, it's become now almost commonplace that almost everyone is doing it in some way or another.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned as far as like the pandemic and in my experience, just what I've been seeing between the weddings that happened the second half of last year that were smaller, and even now people who they did a small ceremony last year, but they're now doing their bigger reception. There's a reason why the thing they did, in the midst of the pandemic was not the party. Obviously, there are a lot of reasons for that, but they wanted to make sure that they went through the ceremony and that they were married. And I think, like you said, it gives it a different importance because that's the part, that I think people sometimes forget. That's why you're there. It's not the dress. It's not the party. It's the moment you're getting married.
Exactly. It's why everybody came, and it's funny because there's some couples who say, I really want the shortest ceremony ever. I'm like, why? Well, you're going to jib people of like that most special moment? At least have 15 minutes of something. And then I convince them of how important that ceremony is. And I'm usually able to convince people as to why they need to really invest their energy, their time, everything into making this the most special moment.
You obviously mentioned people are afraid of public speaking. What are some other roadblocks you see people you work with, just as far as like getting started or once they're in the midst of the process, like I'm stuck, what do I do? What are some common roadblocks?
People don't know where to start. And if you go online, you become dizzy because there's so much on there. There's everything you could possibly want on how to write your own vows. So there's all this stuff, but where do you start? It becomes overwhelming and inundating. And that's when either somebody finds out about me through some, whether it's referral or another client or a podcast like YouTube, whatever it is, they find me and I promise them that I literally will hold their hands through the entire process. They don't ever have to look online and Google how to write my vows because I'm doing all the grunt work for them. And I'm holding their hands and guiding them through every step of this. So it's usually a huge relief. But if somebody wants to, of course, obviously not everybody works with me. And I will say that I'm also the only one who does this kind of work. I think there are vow writers out there and all the power to them. They do great work, but it's not what I do because I'm not the writer. I use what people give me. I use their words. And I will probe, I'll ask a lot of questions, but their sentences, their answers to my questions are what I use to craft their vows. So it is 1,000,000% from their hearts, not mine. And that's a really important thing to note. So I am the only one doing this currently, as far as I know. But of course, most people don't come to me. I mean, there are millions of people out there writing their vows and they figure it out. I think to find one site online and follow their advice rather than going crazy and looking all over the place because it just will overwhelm you easily.
One thing that I see, because I always recommend to my couples, if they're not doing custom vows, then to do a letter reading or something personal, because especially for people who do like a Catholic Mass, they're not necessarily given the opportunity to write their own vows. But one thing that I hear a lot is, oh, I'm not a good writer. What would you say to someone who says that? And I know you mentioned you use their own words, but what would you say to someone who's in this process and nervous because they feel like they're just not a good writer?
Working with me, when they answer a questionnaire that I give them, I tell them I don't care how well they write because I don't care if they can't stitch a sentence together. I will figure it out. I will edit, make suggestions, rewrite something, but always with their approval. If somebody's not a good writer, it's really okay because we're not in the audience as guests, looking at you to win the next Nobel Prize for writing. It's about your emotions. It's speaking from your heart. Say what you feel and don't worry so much about how it's written because that will also tie you up completely. Or have a friend help you out. Maybe somebody who is a writer who can take the words had a big brain dump with, and you've got it all on 10 pieces of paper and you don't know where to start and where to put it, maybe have a friend help you. But I don't think it's really about how well they're written as much as it is how you're getting your emotion, your raw emotion from your heart. These are the deepest, most innermost feelings, and it's a love story. You're giving your future spouse a gift. Don't worry about how it sounds.
Once a couple, they've written their vows, they've worked with you, the vows, they feel like what they have on paper is great. Now they just have to walk out in front of all their closest friends and family and say it. So what would you say to someone who, you mentioned, again, the biggest fear people have is public speaking. What would you say to someone who's just afraid of going up there and speaking from the heart?
Well, again, it's about practicing. So my suggestion is, and also I have to say, it's about practicing out loud. Reading the vows to yourself will do absolutely zip. It goes in one ear and out the other. If you say them out loud, and if you practice every day, at least 2 to 3 times, whether you do it in front of a mirror, or you go talk to the tree outside, or whatever you do, as long as your future spouse cannot hear you, because it really should be top secret. As much as you practice and get familiar with the words, that's the key right there. Not memorize, that's disastrous. But get as familiar as you can with the words. That will take so much pressure off of you. And breathe. A lot of breathing. A lot of just calming yourself down. But if you're that nervous to speak in public, I wouldn't do your vows. Then I would do a private letter, like you said, or just the vows between the two of you in a little private moment. There are other ways of doing this. Why put yourself through such stress if you're that terrified to speak in public?
That's a great point. I've seen a few people do the vows privately, and it's a beautiful moment that way too. And it's more intimate, and yeah, that's great. Yeah, I don't think you should feel pressured if you just hate it. Don't do it. It's your wedding.
No, why bother? Why put yourself through that?
So you mentioned you also will work with, especially through the pandemic, and again, you mentioned it, and I've seen a lot of more, uncles and parents be officiants because it's a way to help keep the numbers down, and when that was incredibly important. How would you recommend someone who has never officiated a wedding before go about figuring out writing a ceremony and making it everything their couples want it to be?
Well, for the most part, the ceremony I work with a couple on, because it's their ceremony. They have to love it. So I really work with a couple on the actual ceremony. I will work with this uncle, father, sister, whoever, on the beginning part, the 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes of, why am I standing here marrying these two people? What is my relationship with them? What do I hope for them in the future? And maybe tell a funny story about one of them or both of them, or, so I help them write that. And once that's pretty well done, and we've rehearsed it, and we've rehearsed the entire ceremony many times, because again, not everybody's comfortable speaking in public, and even these people who have been asked to officiate a ceremony. So practice, practice, practice. And then I coach them on, how to stand there, and how, just like I do with my couples, in, don't hunch over, don't, just read staring down at the binder if that's what you're doing as an officiant without ever looking up. Get out of the frame of the photographers, for that first kiss, for the vows, get out of the way, all those logistical things that then they're fully ready.
If you could give one piece of advice to every single couple, what would it be?
Do your own vows, write them. It's so worth it. It's so worth it. It's like I said before, it's a gift to the person you're about ready to marry. And it's a gift to your guests because they're having an incredible experience. It's not a boring one, as it could be. Don't be afraid. Just dive in, do it. It makes all the difference in the world.
Can you tell me a little bit of the process about how you help kind of both members of the couple independently create something that really works for their wedding?
When a couple comes to me and hire me, the first thing we do is the three of us will meet, and it's the only time the three of us will discuss their vows, because I make them promise on their first child or whatever, never to discuss these vows together, because I really believe it's got to be top secret until the moment of. Then I work with each person individually, and we write, we collaborate. Again, it's very stress-free, it's fun. It's the one part of the planning of the wedding that actually really has no stress involved. A wedding can be, as we all know, extraordinarily stressful. And this part isn't. You know, I try to take that away from people. And so in working together, we write the vows, and then I help them practice. And so it's important to know that, you know, I do not work with couples together on the vows. It's a separate thing. The questions that I ask are very specific. For example, why do you want to marry her? It's such a simple question, right? So if somebody sits and, you know, writes, well, because she's so generous, I'm going to say, wait a minute, give me an example. What do you mean she's so generous? That means nothing to me. We're telling a story. Well, when I was away on a business trip and my mother was really sick, she went to the pharmacy, she picked up the medication, she made her dinner, she did her laundry, all these things that I'm like, okay, we've got a story here. So it's about specificity. It's about really telling your love story. And that's a very important part of all this.
Tanya, awesome. Thank you so much for all of your great insights and for being on the show.
My pleasure.
Tanya, the Vow Whisperer, all of her information is going to be in the description below. So if you are pulling your hair out, trying to figure out how to write the perfect vows, reach out to her and she can help you out and make it so you don't have to pull out any more hair. Please subscribe here on YouTube, follow on Instagram and Facebook. We have new content out all the time to help you with your wedding planning. Thanks again, and happy planning.